Hello, my name is JC and Mr. Bauer. Today I'm going to be talking about some Celtic instruments and some elements of Celtic music that are very common across each Celtic nation. And so to begin, I have right here a mandolin. Now, fiddle, is actually a very big part of Celtic music, but a fiddle's played like this. You've all seen fiddles. They're basically the same. They're basically the same thing as violins. You play them like this, and they give a very bright and rich sound, especially when you hold the bow very long. There's like a very big cry that comes out from that. Now because it's very late right now, I don't want to be using a violin, so I actually have this mandolin here to show you, Chase, how it works. Now, a mandolin can actually play reels like a fiddle. In fact, a fiddle can play things very fast as well, but on a mandolin, you can do the same. You can do those same reels because it's basically the same instrument. It's just strung like a guitar. So as such, you can play reels like this. Now, that's a reel from a French Canadian group, and as you can see, that sounds very Celtic. In fact, a lot of Quebecois music actually has a lot of Celtic influence. There's a few other. You'll actually find out later on this course that there's a lot of Quebecois, Newfoundland, Appalachian, even some Australian and Canadian music. Other Canadian music actually has a lot of their origins with Irish people. And as such, because there's a lot of Irish emigration that really fused into these cultures. But back to the mandolin, we're going to talk about another thing we can do here is we can play on a mandolin chords like a guitar. You can't do this on a violin, you can only do this on a mandolin. Now, another instrument we're going to talk about now are some tin whistles. And we have two of these right here on my desk. We have a C tin whistle and a D tin whistle. Now, one thing you'll notice that these are actually made of course, metal. These are actually more cheaper ones. So as you can see, these ones are made of bronze. And yeah, bronze can be a little weak. Tin whistles can rust up. You got to make sure that you manage them pretty well. Make sure to spray the top. Make sure to do some derusting. But one thing I like about these is that they have a very rich and loud sound. It's actually very poignant. But one thing I will say about these is that you can only play one whistle in two scales. For example, this D one right here, you can only play it in D major, which would be play it in D major, which would be B minor. And you can also play it in G major, which would be E minor. But one thing too is that in order to get it, this second to last hole right here would have to be covered if you want to play that in G. Now it's the same thing with a C here. You can play it only in C or A minor or F, or F major, which is also D minor. And if you want to do F, you have to cover this hole right here. As such, these can go for a lot. Like, you have to collect a lot of these. In fact, I went to a store in Kilkenny in Ireland, and there was a whole line of them. You just had a C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F, all the way up the scale. And the thing is that even though you only need like half of those, it's still going to be a lot of money to buy and manage each and every one of those. You're going to have to bring them all. And one thing I would recommend getting instead is a recorder. You can get those plastic ones, especially for doing this course, because it's a course, but I really love the sound of the wooden ones. In fact, I have my own wooden one. Again, it's pretty loud. I actually keep it in a very cool area because A lot of recorders, these wooden ones, they can actually bend. They don't really do well in a lot of hot and humid areas, like down south here. But one thing I do like about them is that you can play these in a lot of different scales. You can play them. You can play them especially C sharp, D, E flat. Like you can do all the scales. You can do everything with just a recorder. I would highly recommend getting that. And if you want to know why a recorder kind of sounds quieter, it actually has a much more earthier and natural sounds. I would actually compare it more to like a bird. This, of course, a tin whistle sounds like a whistle that's tuned and has that very metallic sound attached to it. But a recorder, it actually has because it's made from wood, it actually gives off a more natural sound. Now, another thing we're going to talk about is bagpipes. Now, first off, we're going to talk about Scottish bagpipes. These are standard Scottish bagpipes, like the Highland pipes. They look in plaid, and you've seen the pictures of Scotsmen. You'll have a lot of them wearing boots, kilts, hats, and you see them you see a lot of these depictions of them playing bagpipes, and it's very nice to hear, especially outside. You don't want to hear bagpipes inside, but these bagpipes are typically meant to be celebratory or funeral based or military based. They have this very mighty and loud sound to them. However, there is a variant in Ireland that I want to touch on called the Uilleann pipes or the Union pipes. In fact, despite being called areophones, you don't actually blow into these. You actually pump into them with a sack, with the bag itself under your arm, and you inflate it by doing this motion. And you actually play it sitting down, and you have to just move. You'll have a lot of other pipes sticking out of it, and it's actually harder than it sounds. Believe it or not, it's actually harder to play these than it is to play the Highland pipes. And the bagpipe is just something that's very big in a lot of Celtic music. In fact, Galicia is known for them. Brittany has a lot of bagpipe music. And one thing I'm going to talk about too is you're going to see, even though we have some distinctly Celtic instruments, you're going to have a lot of common ones that are used all around the world, especially in the realms of Western music. But things that we have can be used in Celtic music, like a guitar, for example, or a piano, even drums. Those have a place in Celtic music. There's actually a variant of a Celtic drum called a boudran, where you actually hold it and you actually use a bump like this. You actually use a wooden bump and play it like this. Now, one thing we're going to talk about is how these are played. And we're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about some modes, and we're going to talk about some time signatures. Now, one thing we're going to talk about is, because Celtic music is a very Western-based music, you're going to have a lot of the basic scales. Here's a C. Here's C. Now, one thing you're going to learn about in a lot of Celtic music are some other modes, and the one I'm going to introduce you now is the Mixodonolean mode. It's hard to pronounce, but instead of going up to B here, which is your 7th, you're going to go down to here, which is B flat. That's going to be your 7th flat, and it's actually kind of interesting because this actually makes it an F major scale, Ionian, but it actually is going to be a C Mixodonolean. It sounds like this. In fact, you're going to hear a lot of that in a lot of Celtic music. It kind of sounds like blue. You hear a lot in blues music, some funk. But you actually notice that that's actually a very big component of Celtic music as well. Now, one thing that you're going to find pretty fascinating, especially when it pertains to to a lot of Irish, Scottish, Welsh, a lot of this kind of music, is that you're going to notice that a lot of their time signatures are in 6/8. And in Galicia, for example, they have a lot of dances that are in 6/8. Now, if you don't know what 6/8 is, it's typically, we know common time is 4/4. That is 4 beats. That is 4 beats per measure based off of the quarter notes, which are again measured by 4 quarter note, which are quarter notes. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. However, 6/8 is different because 6 is going to be the number of eighth notes. You're gonna have 6/8 notes in your measures. People like to interpret this as 3/4, three quarter notes, but 6/8 is actually based on eighth notes, like 6/8 notes, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, dun, 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 dun. In fact, the way I like to see it is it kind of functions like a pendulum, like this. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. It kind of gives off a very hypnotic sort of tone to it. Now, for example, here's something in 4/4. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're gonna instead use 6/8. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a lot of variance to it too, like 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what you're gonna hear a lot with 6/8. Now, you're gonna have a lot of notes going up, and you're gonna have a lot of notes jumping around. They like to slide up and down like this. You're gonna hear a lot of just basically going up the scales, up and down, arpeggios, things like that will influence the way this music is played. And for example, I'm gonna do some Mixodynian in 6/8. So I was playing the high C 8th, and then I was adding in that Mixodynian 7th. Now, there's other things we can cover, but fortunately, this is all I'm going to talk about for now. This is a crash course in what is probably going to be a full curriculum. I'm trying to just set this up, see how it goes. So I'll see you guys later. See you guys, and let's see what more I can offer in a later date. So this is just your introduction. I'd like for you guys to at least study on, okay, what can I make in 6/8? Can I practice clapping in 6/8? Look up some instruments that you would like to try out. If you guys want to compose for this course, you can actually look into, okay, 6/8, different modes. You're going to hear some other ones too, like a Dorian mode is very common in Celtic music too. And 6/8 is not the only time signature. There's also a lot of 2/4s and cut times, which it's 1 2 1 2 1 2. But we're gonna get more into that in a future course. So thank you guys for watching, and hopefully we can meet up next time. Thank you.